In 1954, the French army built a fortress believed to be impregnable in the valley of Dien Bien Phu, convinced they had set a perfect trap for the Viet Minh. They believed the enemy could never haul artillery up the mountains. They believed air power would decide everything. But after just 56 days and nights, that very fortress became a trap for them instead. What caused a colonial power to collapse in a remote valley? After the Second World War, France was determined to reassert control over Indochina, driven partly by economic interests and partly by the desire to restore the prestige of a great power that had been defeated and occupied. However, this time France faced a very different opponent from those in its previous colonial wars. The Viet Minh did not seek direct confrontation with a better-equipped French army. Instead, they adopted guerrilla warfare, taking control of the countryside, forests, and mountainous regions, gradually wearing down their adversary. From 1946 to 1953, France managed to hold the major cities, but much of the rural countryside lay beyond its control. The prolonged conflict drained France financially, eroded troop morale, and intensified political pressure at home. By 1953, Paris needed a decisive victory, not only on the battlefield, but also at the international negotiating table. At this point, France's opponent was no longer merely a guerrilla force, but a rapidly maturing army with unified leadership and strict discipline. Politically, the Viet Minh were led by Ho Chi Minh, who understood that victory depended not only on military success, but also on popular support and the international context. Militarily, the Dien Bien Phu campaign was commanded by General Vo Nguyen Giap, a leader without formal military training, yet renowned for his flexible strategic thinking and his ability to learn quickly from the realities of war. In late 1953, the French army deliberately parachuted into the valley and built a large fortified base there. Their objective was to control the northwestern region, cut off Viet Minh supply routes to Laos, and lure the main Viet Minh forces into a conventional battle, one in which France believed its superior firepower and air power would decide the outcome. In the calculations of the French High Command, Dien Bien Phu was designed as a perfect trap. However, the Viet Minh did not rush into an attack. Instead, they took time to encircle the position, prepare their forces, haul artillery onto the surrounding hills, and gradually dismantle the enemy's defensive system. In the very valley the French believed to be safest, they found themselves surrounded and ultimately defeated after 56 days and nights of intense fighting. The Dien Bien Phu fortress was divided into multiple strongpoints, bearing familiar Western names such as Beatrice, Gabrielle, Anne-Marie, Dominique, Elaine, and Huguette. All of them were positioned around a central airstrip, which served as the lifeline for aerial resupply. The French believed that as long as they held the airfield, they would never be cut off. From the air, aircraft could deliver ammunition, food, and reinforcements at any time. However, what the French military failed to anticipate was the way the Viet Minh approached the battle. Under the command of General Vo Nguyen Giap, the Viet Minh did not rush into an attack. Instead, they spent months preparing, hauling artillery, transporting ammunition and supplies along treacherous jungle routes. Heavy guns weighing several tons were moved by hand, through mountains and deep ravines, something the French High Command believed to be impossible. At first, the Viet Minh considered launching a rapid assault in hopes of achieving a quick victory. However, faced with the superior firepower of the French forces, Vo Nguyen Giap decided to shift to a strategy of fight steadily, advance steadily. This decision completely changed the course of the battle. Instead of rushing into a direct confrontation, the Viet Minh focused on encirclement, cutting off supply lines, and gradually wearing down the enemy. Tens of thousands of civilian laborers were mobilized to accomplish what many French officers believed to be impossible. Heavy artillery was dismantled and hauled through jungles and mountains by hand, using ropes and rudimentary tools. A vast network of trenches, stretching hundreds of kilometers, was dug, inching closer to French strongpoints day by day. Artillery was positioned high on the surrounding slopes and carefully camouflaged, rendering French air power largely ineffective. French pilots could hear the roar of guns echoing down into the valley, yet were unable to pinpoint their exact locations for effective counterattacks. By early March 1954, with Viet Minh artillery discreetly positioned on the hills surrounding the valley, the balance of power at Dien Bien Phu had completely shifted. From the high ground, Viet Minh guns were able to dominate the airstrip and fire directly into French positions below. The air superiority on which France had relied began to be neutralized. On the afternoon of March 13, 1954, the Viet Minh opened the campaign with a fierce assault on the Beatrice strongpoint. Artillery barrages shattered defensive works and crippled the French command structure. Within a single night, Beatrice fell. Soon after, the Gabriel strongpoint met the same fate. The northern gates of the entrenched camp were broken, and French morale began to falter sharply. Rather than launching mass assaults, the Viet Minh shifted to a strategy of fighting steadily and advancing methodically. They dug hundreds of kilometers of communication trenches, gradually closing in on the remaining French positions. By day they concealed themselves, by night they dug trenches and moved ammunition, tightening the encirclement step by step. French forces were increasingly trapped in the valley, deprived of any real freedom of maneuver. At central strongpoints such as Dominique and Elaine, the fighting was exceptionally fierce. Both sides battled for every meter of ground, every bunker and firing position. Artillery, mortars, and aerial bombardment turned the Dien Bien Phu valley into a sea of fire. Each hill changed hands multiple times, at the cost of thousands of lives. Meanwhile, aerial resupply became increasingly difficult. Viet Minh anti-aircraft fire shot down or damaged numerous transport aircraft. Supplies often landed off target, and in some cases fell directly into enemy hands. Food stocks dwindled, ammunition ran short, and wounded soldiers could not be evacuated. French troop morale deteriorated sharply. By the end of April 1954, the Dien Bien Phu entrenched camp existed largely in name only. The strongpoints were isolated from one another, the command system was in disarray, and French commanders understood that defeat was now only a matter of time, with no viable means left to reverse the situation. On the afternoon of May 7, 1954, the Viet Minh launched their final general assault. The remaining French strongpoints were captured one by one. By that evening, General de Castries and the French command at Dien Bien Phu were forced to surrender. The Viet Minh victory flag flew above the command bunker, bringing an end to 56 days and nights of intense fighting. Dien Bien Phu was not just a battle, but a moment that reshaped the course of the 20th century. The victory at Dien Bien Phu was not merely the collapse of a fortified stronghold, but the collapse of an entire colonial mindset that had endured for centuries. For the first time in modern history, a colonial army, less equipped and technologically inferior, defeated a major Western military power in a decisive battlefield confrontation. From Dien Bien Phu, the wave of national liberation spread across Asia, Africa, and Latin America. Algeria, Tunisia, Morocco, nations once considered incapable of self-liberation suddenly saw a path forward. Dien Bien Phu proved that the will, strategy, and unity of a people could overcome even the greatest advantages in weapons and technology. This was not only a victory for Vietnam, but a victory for smaller nations everywhere who dared to rise against an imposed destiny. If you found this video offered a valuable perspective on world history, please leave a like, share your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe to the channel for more stories that shaped the modern world.